know, I asked a question to a number of the ralliers today that I asked when I was in London, England, 10 days ago at their big rally for Israel. And that is, I look at the people who are behind the pro-Hamas hate marches in the street, and I can't help but notice that the overwhelming majority of them are new immigrants who have brought with them a hatred for Jews that they were inculcated with back in the home country, whether that was Syria or Afghanistan or Pakistan or Northern Africa. They didn't learn that anti-Semitism in Canada. They maybe had it fine-tuned in our woke universities, but the people marching in the streets generally are not university grads. They're just plain anti-Semites from Muslim countries where Jew hatred is normal. So I asked a number of people, should we change our open borders immigration policy? And just like in London, England, so many of the Jews here just wouldn't let go of their liberal dream of open borders. Here's a sample. Let me throw an idea. You're just spitballing here. Canada has an enormous immigration level from countries where anti-Semitism is endemic. Do you think we should? Do you think we should change that, both the number and the quality of immigrant?
I'm not going to speak to that because, in my mind, what you have to tell immigrants is that if you come with prejudices, leave them behind or don't come.
We're not saying that right now. There's no quality. There's no values test.
This is still.
Do we need a values test?
Maybe. I don't want to sound like Donald Trump, but maybe. I think the whole point has to be that people have to come to this country knowing that it is a melting pot. That we celebrate diversity, but we also protect diversity. It's the two sides of the same coin. You can't celebrate it and not protect it.
I think when there's 500,000 or 1 million immigrants every year, and many of them come from countries where anti-Semitism is endemic, it's only a matter of time before the anti-Semitic vote in this country is actually sizable. Do you think that we should reduce the number of immigrants, or at the very least have a Canadian values test?
Well, I think that not every immigrant that comes in here is going to be anti-Semitic.
Right, so that they would pass the values test.
But what their children do afterwards is another thing. There seems to be an indoctrination somehow in the age group of our children today that has turned them in an opposite direction from how their parents were raised.
I think that's true in many of our institutions, but I think people who come here directly from Syria or Afghanistan or Pakistan, many of them have a long-standing national hatred towards Jews. That's not my guessing. That's what those countries say.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So why are we?
Concerning.
Should we do something about it?
I think it's up to our children to start thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, if we don't do something now, our children will be a little bit too late.
Yeah.
You seem shy about saying yes, pause immigration or slow down immigration.
No, Canada desperately needs immigration.
Really? To drive up housing costs?
No, not to drive up housing.
To drive down wages?
No, not to drag down wages.
To get in line at our universities and hospital waiting rooms?
No, but
what do we need? What do we desperately need migrants for?
We obviously always need immigration.
But what if they're anti-Semitic?
Well, that's a problem for Canada. Yes, it is. And it's a problem for all Canadians, not just our community.
Right. But you think that you said that's something for our kids to talk about. But don't you think if we leave it for our kids, if we leave it for another generation, we're lost?
They could very well be. Yes. My parents have said that about my generation. So now I'm saying it about theirs.
I've observed a lot of these hate marches across the country. And it's my observation that around 80% of them are newcomers, people who have immigrated to this country from places where anti-Semitism is endemic. Do you think it's time Canada reassess our open borders immigration policy?
I can't comment on that, but I do think today's rally will be very peaceful, and I think we should all be proud of that.
Well, I mean, can I ask why you can't comment on that?
I haven't attended.
No, I'm just talking about, I mean, surely you've seen the videos of these hate marches. Many of them are people who just came here.
I don't think either of us are going to comment on that.
All right. Are you guys in the political business? Is that why?
We're both lawyers.
All right. Your sign says we are not afraid. I think I mean, that's an aspirational thing not to be afraid, but I think many Jews actually are afraid.
I'm afraid. Sure, I'm afraid of losing democracy. I'm afraid of the social fabric falling apart. I'm afraid of the people don't really understand that love is a very important thing. We have to stop the lies, stop the hatred. Let's try to find peace. Let's try to coexist.
All right, well, I want to press you on that
Yeah.
because Canada has a massive open borders immigration policy. My observation is that probably 80% of the people in the hate marches are either new immigrants or I mean, they are not old stock Canadians. They were brought here under mass immigration, and I don't think you're going to convince them to love Jews or even to not hate Jews. I just don't think so. Some of the vitriol I've seen on the streets is insane. Do you think that open borders immigration was a mistake?
First of all, I don't want anyone necessarily to love Jews. I just want to be respected like any other human being.
Do you really think, you look at those hate marches, you think you're going to turn them around?
No, that's why I think we believe in the Mashiach. I don't know if man can solve this problem.
Can I ask you a harder question? I've observed a lot of these hate marches, and by my observation, 75-80% of them are new Canadians, people we've opened the doors to in the last 20 years. Do you think Canada ought to reconsider mass immigration?
I think that they should take a hard look at it for several reasons. One of which is housing. Like, we're basically bringing these people in and saying, go live in homeless shelters because you won't be able to afford a place to live. The other one is that a lot of them are not necessarily on board with the Canadian acceptance and tolerance and all of that stuff. So that's what you're asking about. I think it's worth a look. I'm not a hardliner that would just say, close our doors because they're intolerant of our way of life. But I do think it needs to be revisited.
I think the Jewish community, which is, because of its own experience, when Jews were trying to flee Nazi Germany and were turned away, the Jews have been for open borders. Not every Jew, but the official Jews. And now the official Jews are finding it hard to say, we got to close the doors because the Nazis are coming here now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, when the war was happening in Syria, there were so many Jewish people that were doing everything to have them come here, to bring them here, to give them food, clothing, shelter. We were collecting belongings for them.
So you helped bring Syrians here?
No, I didn't help personally bring Syrians here, but what we did was we collected for them.
So when you say we?
Yeah.
Oh, so you were involved in helping? So you helped organize?
Organizations, yes, that I was involved with, yes.
And how do you?
We did that, and you'll never forget the images, that we've seen of like that little 2-year-old child washed up on board, in Europe, like that horrible scene that turned a lot of people in the last or 2 elections ago to that Kurdi child that was on the beach that was found dead, and
Kurdi.
That migrant child, Kurdi child. So I mean, there was a heck of a lot of sympathy for that, and rightly so. No child should have to worry about his security, and that means no child anywhere in the world. Nobody's value is less than anyone else's.
Well, does Canada really have to take them all, though?
To take them all?
Well, we're taking 1 million people a year.
Canada's government was elected by a lot of people who will have to speak up on that issue, not just me.
Well, I'm glad to have been here. I'm used to coming to Ottawa in the biting cold. It's not as cold as it was a year and a half ago during the trucker convoy. One of the first speakers said they have come here to Ottawa because this is the place of democracy, the place of our common values, and they want to be heard. I think it's falling on deaf ears. Justin Trudeau doesn't give a damn. He's done the math. There are 5 times as many Muslim Canadians as Jewish Canadians. And even though I would like to think that most Muslims are not antipathetic towards the Jews, enough of them are that there is significant voting bloc, especially in places Justin Trudeau wants to hold on to, like Mississauga, like some of the suburbs and other parts of the country. And it's so clear to me now that every day the problem gets worse. Justin Trudeau has doubled immigration numbers to 1 million a year. And many of the people who are fomenting hatred, I mean, of course, there are some Indigenous Canadians, and by that I mean Canadian-born, but most of them are brought here anti-Semitic, and that has not stopped. And I have to say, Pierre Poilievre hasn't talked about reducing immigration numbers either, has he?